Okay, welcome on my newest video. Um, of course, I got a lot of reactions when I talked about the keris Majapahit. That's what you can expect. And a lot of people ask me about the keris Majapahit, and if I give some extra information or asking things about their keris. But maybe I have to disappoint you. I'm not a specialist in the tangible part of the keris. These are all gifts, and these keris come from my family, and of course I like to keep the traditions of the keris alive. But for people, it's very important that the keris are probably coming from Majapahit era. But that's not the most important thing. It's about the things that you don't see. And of course people want to give things names. That's very important for people. But let's first talk about the word Majapahit. Majapahit is not only an era, but it's also, when something is old, they call it Majapahit, not really knowing where it comes from. So I want to give my opinion about keris Majapahit. And for me, I'm going to Indonesia tomorrow, and I really want to study about the intangible parts, so the things you don't see, the traditions of the keris. Well, commonly people call this keris Majapahit. And looking at the color and looking at the probable age, it is old. So in this case, Majapahit stands for the word old, but it's actually a sajen keris, a keris used for offering. What is really old is this kujang. That is really old. And it comes from an excavation near, where was it, Yogyakarta. And this is really old. So they call it that it comes from the Buddha time, but I don't know. Actually, with all the things we don't know, because it's very difficult, and there were no cameras like this camera to be sure that it is really coming from Buddha time. But let's say it's an old one. Now there you go. We call this keris Singosari. But is it Singosari? Well, I don't know. It has absolutely got some age, and it's an important part. It doesn't show any palmer at all. And when I look at the size, and if I check internet, just simple investigation about it, then this could be the form of Singosari. But let's say that I've got a keris Singosari that is very good for me. And I go to an empu and I ask him, well, can you make a keris like this? Then this keris can be made. So it could be that it's made, let's say, 300-400 years ago, but not coming from Singosari. But for me, it's an important part. And there you go. It's not about the age, the real age, it's about the value in your heart about the keris. Now, keris like this, like the Ceblokan, that's the Pesi Ceblokan over there. We call it Majapahit, but is it Majapahit? It's old, but is it important that it's Majapahit? Yeah, probably for a collector, but not for me. It's a very precious and old keris, and I call it Majapahit, but I don't know if it's real Majapahit, because it's about the things you don't see. Like this keris here. This is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful old keris. You can see in the gonjo, you can see untwisted, and here you can see the twisted palmer, something like bulu ayam or ron ganduru. But there you go again. The names are so important at this day, but it's not. It's about the value, It's the value that makes it very, 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 very important. There's also a very old keris. It's a very old one. It comes from my family, so it was in the hands of one of my ancestors or uncles, or you see a little bit of palmer over there. It's even, you could call it an ugly keris, and it's not important that it is real keris of Majapahit. It's an old one, like this one. We've got a lot of keris like this. They are small keris. And very precious because they feel right, you know, they feel correct. Now there we go again a keris, old keris, with a little bit of palmer. Is it Majapahit? It's not important. It's a family piece, and it's a pusaka, what we call a loaded piece of history. Let's call it like this. These two keris, I like those, both of them, very much. Now most of the people would call this Majapahit, especially with the gonjo, you know, that's going a little bit forward like this, and the palmer, the color. It's the metal is very dense, so you don't see the holes of age, just like this one, you know. Little bit of palmer, you can see some palmer over it. The rest of the palmer is already gone. And if I go to collectors, they will absolutely say, well, that's Majapahit, that's clearly Majapahit, like this one. But is it important? No, this is coming from an uncle of mine, and they say that he was an admiral, but not really, because it's officer for the sea. So there you go again. But after times, after ages, they say, well, he was an admiral in the army, but yeah, even that can be changed. And is it important? Of course not. I will try to keep the traditions of the keris alive, and that's why I go to Indonesia, to study if I can find things of the traditions. Now this is what they call Segaluh, you know, with the very strange place of the Pesi. But is it real Segaluh? I don't know. It's really old keris, you know. I like it very much because that's a keris, a women keris from one of my ancestors, so very important to me. And this is one of the oldest keris that I have got. They also sometimes call it Segaluh, but there is a big difference if you see where the Pesi is. So it could also be Pajajaran, but for me, and that is important, it's a Sempana keris, Sempana 9 look. And Sempana keris are very spiritual keris. And so I do not want to break all the things that I said in the previous keris videos. But what I want to bring and give to you is some beautiful keris. And my question is it that important to know that it's real keris Majapahit? And why do people call this keris Majapahit? It's a Sajen keris, so Majapahit doesn't mean the real Majapahit, but it also means that it's old. And let's not forget the intangible part, so the things that you do not see of the keris. Because for me, that's the most important thing of the keris. But it's okay if you are a collector, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. Everybody got their own vision of the keris. And that's how it should be, yeah? And let's do not stop with discussing about the keris, because it's the most beautiful thing in the earth. That's my opinion about the keris. Okay, there you go.